everyone, and welcome to today's DataVox webinar, First Responder Signal Required for Large Buildings, presented by SureCall. My name is Jessica, and I will be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this webinar through Cisco WebEx events, and the audio can be heard through your PC or by calling into the phone number listed and with the access code provided in your confirmation email or calendar invite for this event. Today's webinar is being recorded on behalf of DataVox, and participation in this event indicates your consent to being included in that recording. All attendees will receive an email with a link to the completed recording 24 to 48 hours post-event. If you have questions for the presenters at any time during this presentation, you may submit those questions via the Q&A feature to the bottom right of your screen. This should already be turned on. Simply click Q&A and the text box will appear. Our panel will be responding to these questions throughout the presentation via text and verbally at the conclusion of the presentation. If you are in need of support or have a question not pertaining to today's topic, please utilize the chat feature and I will be happy to assist you. This feature is separate from the Q&A feature and can be turned on by clicking the chat bubble in the lower center of your screen. Now that we have reviewed the features of this webinar, we would like to start off today's presentation with a few words from our VP of Building Technology Solutions, Mike Bebchek. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jessica, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining today. We're excited to have the SureCall team with us, both Eric and Frankie, and it's about a topic that's been front and center in the Texas market recently, specifically the public safety first responder DAS and new buildings coming online, existing buildings. How are they approaching this new code requirement to have that signal source for first responders in these buildings? So they're going to go over that. I know SureCall's been a leader in the market for the last 20 years in both cellular and public safety DAS. So we're excited to have the team. And so having said that, I'll turn it over to Eric and the guys, and over to you.
Good deal. Thank you very much. I do appreciate the time, as Mike has said here. We just get this presentation up and rolling. There we go. So my name is Eric Mercel. I am the Director of Sales for SureCall. You also have Frankie Smith on the presentation as well. He is our VP of Sales. And today we're going to talk about a lot of different styles of technologies. We're going to explain, give you a good understanding as to who SureCall is. We're going to talk a little bit about what DAS is and the different types of DAS solutions that are available out in the marketplace today. We'll do a really quick high-level overview of our cellular solutions as well before we get into public safety. And the main reason for that is code constantly changes. There is a lot of new code being written today that'll be in effect within the next couple of years that will not only inspect public safety frequencies as part of a fire inspection, but they're also going to be inspecting a lot of the cellular frequencies as well, especially with the launch and the national launch of FirstNet, the first responder cellular network that's out there in the marketplaces today. So without further ado, let's get right into the presentation itself. So SureCall, we were founded in 2001, so we're just about that 20-year-old mark. We are based out of Fremont, California, and we have offices in Utah, Chicago, and Atlanta. And we've always been rooted in that commercial or enterprise space, so that space of up to that 250,000 square feet. And we continue to press that envelope to do much larger and larger buildings. But the benefit of having SureCall being in that commercial space is we know large building, we know large space, and we're able to take that technology and drive it down into some of the smaller building spaces, maybe small homes, small office type of scenarios. We are definitely a very innovative company, and we always focus on performance whenever we come out with a new solution that's out there. Due to FCC rules and carrier rules, a lot of the boosters that are out there are going to look very similar. But some of the things to really kind of take away is how innovative SureCall is, owning the patents of the 5-band cellular solution, so it's more of a cellular agnostic type of technology that's out there. We're always looking at how we can push the envelope. So we've come out with new technologies to ensure that the boosters will always stay active and always be able to perform under the most stringent circumstances out in the marketplace. So SureIQ technology always makes sure that the booster will never shut off due to overpower. All of them have automatic gain control, and they're all FCC and on the cellular side, carrier approved. We've announced the first 5G booster. More importantly, we've announced and we've released a brand new remote monitoring software that will allow you to manage the systems that are out in the marketplaces today. So what are we looking at when we look at DAS? DAS is a distributed antenna system, and there's a lot of different types of DAS solutions that are out there. There are active DAS, solutions. And the pros, I mean, let's face it, an active DAS is the gold standard in the industry. These are best for the very, very large venues, working at arenas. You're looking at very, very large hotel spaces, very large hospital solutions. And they do allow for the maximum amount of simultaneous users on a network itself. Some of the cons against them, they're pretty expensive. They're $2 to $4 per square foot, and they can take a very long time to introduce into a marketplace. And you've got something that's in between a passive DAS and an active DAS solution, which would be a phantom cell, microcell, or voice over Wi-Fi. These are typically designed for a single carrier solution that's out there. You do have to have an open Wi-Fi network for them to work within the network into the solution itself. But it's the biggest drawback is they just don't hand off back to a network. So if you're walking around, you're a pacer, you're on your phone, you're on a radio, and you're getting close to the windows, you could potentially drop the calls. So SureCall provides that coverage and that passive DAS for all carriers and all technologies. And then, of course, on our 700 and 800 megahertz, or also known as our P25 radio network solutions that a lot of the first responders are utilizing. And they're very, very cost effective, anywhere between 50 to 75 cents a square foot, and they're very, very easily deployed. So how does a passive system work? Well, it's pretty simple. Being passive, we are reliant on that outdoor signal. So we're going to capture that outdoor signal off of what we call a donor antenna, feed that into a BDA or a bidirectional amplifier, and then we're going to distribute that just like you would with an active system throughout the building itself. Now, obviously, the better the signal outside the building, the better the results are going to be for the way a booster or passive solution that works out there. And if you remember some of the opportunities that we mentioned, being at 250,000 square foot and we're constantly pushing the envelope, we're doing a lot of different multi-carrier DAS and public safety radio systems and much, much larger solutions that are out there. Recently, we finished a 700,000 square foot hospital in Texas where actually we decommissioned the active DAS and installed a passive DAS solution in there for the simple fact that it saved this hospital a lot of money. And very proud to report that it worked flawlessly. There was no issues with it. And we keep looking at how we can go bigger and bigger with a passive solution that's out there in the marketplace. So what causes a weak cell phone signal? Well, there's really three main culprits. There's building materials. As you're building new environments out there, you're building very green buildings or a little bit tighter, more low-E glass. That's all going to reflect a lot of that signal from the outside of the building to get in the inside. Plus, you add terrain into it, or how far away from the networks or the towers, would it be a cellular tower or a public safety radio solution that's out there. That's all playing a pretty big role. You couple that with all those building materials that I've mentioned just a little bit earlier, and it's either going to reflect or absorb a lot of that cellular and public safety radio signals that are out there. So the bigger culprits, especially if you're building large buildings that are looking at tilt wall style constructions, the concrete, the rebar on the inside, you can kind of see down on the bottom there, we're starting to really impede that signal to a point that it just won't be able to be a usable signal inside the building itself. So what product's really going to be right for you? And it's going to determine on a couple different factors that are out there, but SureCall and DataVox are here to really kind of take that guesswork out of that design phase. So we utilize multiple styles of different meters that are out there to be able to capture that outdoor signal, to really be able to inspect what type of the starting point we're going to be utilizing. And then we're going to be able to turn around and provide two basic style designs back to the customers. So we'll be able to offer you a design that looks similar to this, or in a public safety world, we offer a full IB wave design option that will give the AHJ or the fire marshal the ability to inspect the plan, to be able to pull the permits off of this before we get into the installation side of it. So this is very important to be able to understand that it's a one-stop shop between the DataVox team and the SureCall team to be able to provide a 100% solution to be able to give you that in-building coverage that's out there. We also provide a full bill of materials for the customers so you can see exactly what products are going to be installed. And then, of course, when we start helping with putting together a lot of the submittal packets for public safety, we'll really be able to create that entire package or kit that is an easy turnkey solution for for the final CO to be able to get into the buildings themselves. So looking at a lot of the different products that we have to offer, obviously SureCall manufactures a pretty wide range of products. So just really quickly on the cellular side, we do a lot within the mobile, the fleet, the RV side of the solutions that are out there. We do a lot within the residential markets as well, and especially with this work from home initiative, with the the unprecedented times that we're seeing today, there's a lot of American homes that are, well, over half of them are cellular only. So being able to make those phone calls inside the building, so we have a very uh, easily priced entry-level product for our cellular solutions to truly be able to bring that cellular technology inside the homes. We make them for small homes, we make them for a little bit larger homes, and we definitely see a crossover when we start looking at cellular connectivity inside the vertical or inside the commercial space. And about 74% of people have been complaining about inside cellular coverage. And with the mobile offices that we have today, staying connected with our customers are going to be more important than ever. But even more important than that is the ability for our customers to really be able to stay connected when we look at some type of emergency scenario. So bringing this back to the very beginning and kind of talking about the different codes that are out there and inspecting what we expect out of this cellular networks that are out there and why it's so important is over 70% of phone calls coming into 911 are made by a cellular phone. If you cannot make a cellular call, you can't get the emergency services that you're looking for. Hence why they're starting to inspect not only public safety frequencies, but again, in the near future, they will also be inspecting the cellular side of the technology as well. So we look at the different styles of technologies with our 4G and LTE solutions, and then even the future of what 5G really kind of looks like. And there is a very easy pathway to current 5G technologies that we've brought to the marketplace today with our Force 8 booster, or our 5G solution. This will work off of all the T-Mobile, some of the AT&T bands that are out there, but this is our low band technology for our 5G solution. So you couple all the cellular technology and you bring it into the emergency radio response systems or communication systems, or our Guardian 4. So our Guardian 4 solution is really designed to work specifically on what we call a P25 network. So it is a Class B half-watt solution that will be able to enhance coverage for those public safety bands in the 700 and 800 megahertz. It does meet all of the national codes that are out there. I know when we go through this presentation, we're going to be focusing on some specific codes in other states, but all those other states have been kind of the role model for what we're looking at today and what the markets are really inspecting. So meeting that national code is very important for us. It does come with a NEMA 4 in the box. It's NEMA 4 rated. We have the built-in SureCall Sentry, which I'll show you guys in a second as to what that does for the marketplace here. So what are we inspecting when we start looking at the different types of technologies that are out there? And where do we see BDAs or bidirectional amplifiers being deployed? And really, there isn't a specific demographic of building type that is being inspected nowadays. Any new construction has to meet this particular code. And this is where that challenge becomes brand new construction. You're standing on a pile of dirt and you're saying, well, I've got great signal out here for my radio systems. I'm not going to need a solution. As we look at everything, plan for the worst and expect the best. So we always recommend to look at this public safety solution as a solution that will have to be installed and plan for that. Because as that building becomes, as a building is constructed, let it be tilt wall, standard stick construction. Are we doing cinder block style construction? As those walls go up, the windows go in, the roof gets laid in, or multiple floors are getting laid on top of the building, you will notice a very steep cutoff in the amount of signal strength that's in the inside of it. So those green buildings really play a big role on it, and unfortunately nowadays, meeting a specific code is required for your certificate of occupancy. Now existing buildings will also have to meet the same code here, but they've pushed that out just a little bit. So they're not inspecting all of the existing buildings right now, but if you are doing any type of remodeling inside where you're pulling permits and fire has to come in and do an inspection, they are going to inspect that building for the same type of, meet the same expectations as a new building construction that's out there. So many of those local municipalities have really required this, and they really are looking at both at NFPA and the IFC standards, which are two different fire codes out in the marketplace, to really be able to ensure that we're meeting the right standards that are out there. So in the Texas market, you guys are an IFC is what you follow for the code is IFC, International Fire Council. And specifically, it's under the code or section 510. So it's important to know that because each rule is going to be just a little bit different. And unfortunately, there's going to be depending on which county you're in within Texas, they follow different years of the code. So it's going to be a little bit vague. Sometimes I like to call it the Wild West, unfortunately, because you can step across the street to a different county and it's a whole different ballgame when it comes down to code compliance that are out there. So some of the basic definitions, bidirectional amplifier, as I mentioned a number of times here, is just another name for signal boosters. It's a one-way signal booster that are also sometimes referred to. Channelized, there's a Class A booster that's available. Class A just means that it can specifically dial in a certain frequency for the market that they're responding to or they're trying to enhance. Broadband, or a Class B booster, is what SureCall has on the market today, and that is a wideband booster. So it will enhance coverage within the entire frequency range of that P25 or that 700, 800 megahertz solution that's out there. And some of the things that they're really inspecting is RSSI, the received strength indicator. And we'll get into what that really looks like and what they're inspecting here in just a little bit. Then, of course, delivered audio quality, or DAQ. And then, again, depending on the market that you're in, it's either known as a BDA or it's known as an ERRCS, or Emergency Radio Responder Radio Coverage System. So looking at the different states that are out there, you can kind of see that the NFPA is really, segregated out there. Most of the states are all IFC states that are out there, which is going to be important when we start looking at how they're adopting new codes into the marketplace today. And you're going to start to see this new NFPA 2524 code that'll be coming out here shortly that's actually taken IFC and NFPA and blending them both together, even more so than they are today. So 2021 is going to be a new adoption that we're going to start to see across the country, which is just put different requirements on what type of booster you can use, and then start adding in those cellular frequencies that are out there. So for example, we talked a little bit about this, with the Florida Fire Prevention Code that's out there. The existing buildings, they have to require the minimum radio coverage by January 1st of 2022. So that type of code inspection is what the state of Texas is going for as well. So this was in place about 2 years ago with Florida, and since they are one of the leaders in the marketplaces, they are starting to really drive towards this across the nation itself. So starting last year, they are starting to really look at how they're going to have that permit for it. And again, they're not coming to every single building. They're only coming to buildings that you're pulling new permits for, as I mentioned, doing some type of new construction or add-on to a building itself. And they're not just coming in under annual fire inspections and starting to do the inspection and saying, well, now you need a BDA because my radio doesn't work in here. It's not the route that they're taking at this point in time. If you're dealing with any type of apartment buildings or MDU style, they've extended that a little bit further just because it's a little more complex to be able to get the solutions installed in there. But still, by the end of 2022, they do have to have some type of plan in place to really ensure that we have the proper connectivity within the building when it comes down to the two-way radio solutions that are out there. So what are they inspecting? They're going to be inspecting a couple different things. There are areas what they call critical coverage areas, and these are areas like the emergency command centers, stairwells, points of egress, lobbies, standpipe cabinets. This is where they consider it essentially 100% coverage is mandated within these areas, which makes sense. If the firefighter is going to be inside the building and this is the main areas that they're going to be in, the radios have to work in those particular areas. The other areas would be your general area coverages. So you can see the numbers are going to be a little bit different here. So when they go in and they do an inspection, they have their radio, and they also have a meter with them that's going to be able to inspect how strong of a signal that is. So they're going to look in there and they're going to look just to make sure that they can hit the signal coverage of a negative 95 dBm inside that building. And when we look over at the IFC side, we have to mandate that not only is it the signal strength, but also that DAQ. Remember, the delivered audio quality of a 3.0 or better, that's where the radios come into play, because they're going to be able to hit the button and see what that delivered audio quality number is back at dispatch. So they're doing a little bit more inspection when they look at with the IFC side of the world. And then there's other parts and pieces you have to make sure we're adding to meet the specific code. So The good news is all of the SureCall Guardian products that we have in the marketplace will be able to meet the specific requirements nationally. So we meet the IFC code. So the antenna malfunction, signal booster failure, the low battery for your battery backup, loss of normal AC, failure for battery charging capabilities, and then all those particular 5 that are right there will automatically, when connected through an annunciator, will automatically alert the fire panel if there's a trouble with the booster solution that's been installed in the building itself. The backup battery that is required, typically it's going to be a 24-hour backup battery unless you're on a full building generator, and then it's going to vary a little bit by municipality that's out there. So we just have to make sure that if when we're looking at the DataVox team, we're coming out there, we're doing the designs. A few things we're going to want to know is obviously the building specifications itself, the market that you're in, and then that's when we'll turn around and provide you with that full submittal packet to really be able to ensure that we meet the AHJ's specifications. So it'll be a very easy turnkey solution with that packet that will have not only the design, the heat maps, the link budgets, but all of the other types of solutions, product data sheets that are in there, so they can have a very clean, easy way to be able to look at how the product is how the product's going to be installed. And just like on the cellular side, this is installing the exact same way. They all use a standard copper or coax cable. So you're going to have your donor signal on the outside, runs it to the BDA, and then from there it's going to distribute out. Now, because this booster is a little more powerful, each one of our BDAs, our Guardian 4s, will be able to cover about 90,000 square feet. So it's a very powerful booster. And if you have a larger space than that, we can add multiple BDAs within a building to be able to cover a little bit larger space that's out there. So again, public safety itself, with all the different levels of inspection that are going to take place, it can look like a pretty daunting task, but when you've got the experts out there that are walking into the building, they're doing the inspection with you, reporting back to you with all the proper with the proper readings, and then of course the proper solution to be able to be installed, it really does take that guesswork out of it for you. We just want to make sure that we're talking about it early and often enough so we can plan for the budgeting that's going to be required to be able to install into the building itself. And we don't want that surprise method at the very end of the building construction phase when you go to open the building and the AHJ says, well, you don't meet the specific requirements, so I can't give you an occupancy permit right now. It turns into that fire drill that we typically turn around pretty quick for you, but now you've got to pay a little bit more to be able to get the post-construction installation done within the building itself. So that's, looking at our SureCall BDA again, the booster itself, again, meets all of the cellular or the specific requirements for all the IFC and the NFPA codes that are out there. It does have all the alarming capabilities built into the solution as well. And once it's installed, anything within that 700 or 800 megahertz solution or signal strength on the outside of the signals on the outside of the building, we're going to be able to enhance and bring your building up to spec, so you can get those certificates of occupancies a lot sooner, and you can move forward with the build out of the building or the transition to the customer itself. So looking beyond, is there any questions that have popped up at all, Jessica? Or
It's Mike. At this time, we're just going to hold the questions till the end, Eric.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So how do we know how the boosters themselves are performing? And that is one thing that SureCall has worked very, very hard with to be able to bring out to a marketplace our SureCall Cloud. So the cloud itself will give all of our boosters at a glance. We'll be able to dial in and see what those boosters are, how those boosters are performing on an individual basis. And not only will we be able to utilize it as a standard solution for monitoring the system, we're also able to utilize this as more of an installation technology. So we'll be able to see what that outside signal strength truly looks like before we do the installation. And then more importantly, we're truly going to be able to work with the booster if there is ever a type of an error that comes up. Let it be it's oscillating, maybe a storm rolled through, knocked down the donor antenna, and now the booster is oscillating. We can add or remove attenuation remotely. So we can get the system up and running much, much faster than a solution that doesn't have remote management built into the booster itself. Resetting it sometimes will fix the solution. But for the most part, the automatic gain control and the SureIQ technology built into our BDAs will automatically adjust for any type of interference that the booster sees. But there are sometimes human intervention has to be brought into place here. So truly being able to take that technology and control it and really manipulate it to tune it to meet a specific building really helps us out with our SureCall Sentry solution that's out there. So, of course, any questions you ever have, the DataVox team is there. We also have our tech team. My phone number is up here if you guys ever have any questions and you want to ask something really quick. Feel free to reach out to any of us at any point in time, and we can get you those responses back pretty quick here. So with that, that is the SureCall presentation at a pretty high level. What questions do we have that may have popped up?
Thanks, Eric. I have a couple questions, and then we can we have some other questions from our participants and audience. So I guess early in the call you mentioned up to 250,000 square feet, but then you also mentioned you just did a Texas hospital for 700,000. Mm-hmm. Could you provide some clarity there?
Yeah. So as technology has changed, when we launched 20 years ago or so, the technology was there, but doing larger scale buildings, that we didn't have the software on the inside of the boosters to really be able to enhance the coverage that we're looking for those larger spaces. So as technology changes and we got a little more sophisticated with our booster solutions, each market allowed us to kind of get bigger. Each specification allowed us to be a little bit bigger and better with what we've done. So when we looked at that very large hospital, we went out and we did some testing with the contractor and really kind of dotted our I's and crossed our T's with it. And then we started the installation. And as that installation went up and running, we found that we did not need to have that active DAS solution in the marketplace anymore. So we're able to disconnect it completely. So we've done buildings 1 million square feet. We've got a 2 million square foot warehouse facility that we're doing a BDA solution on right now in Texas. So there's a lot of, much as technology grew, we're able to get bigger and better, I guess, at the end of the day.
Good feedback. We have a question. Do you have a solution that does both FirstNet and Cell? And I guess you may want to provide some feedback on what FirstNet is.
Sure.
And then address the question.
Yeah, so FirstNet, it's a great question because FirstNet is something that's becoming more and more of a mainstream technology that's out there today. And FirstNet is really designed for first responders. And first responders is a pretty wide range of what a first responder is, but it does give them priority access onto a cellular network. So that instead of their phone saying, and I'm just going to pick on one carrier, let's pick on AT&T. Instead of it saying AT&T on the top of their phone, it'll say FirstNet. In the case of some catastrophic emergency, when everybody picks up their phone to make a phone call, if you have a FirstNet phone, they get priority. So if you're talking, you will probably get dropped if you're not a FirstNet subscriber, and they will be added onto it. So FirstNet does work off in some major markets. It works off of a different band, typically band 14 for AT&T and some of the other carriers. And do we have a solution that will allow for both cellular and FirstNet? Only on the Guardian, so only on the public safety booster do we have that type of a technology. So the Guardian 4 will both do the P25 7,800 meg in addition to the band 14 on the cellular side.
So you bring up a question that, or you bring up something that comes up a lot is, can I have a cellular DAS and a public safety DAS in one appliance and one solution?
You can. On the passive side of the world, you typically have two standalone solutions, and really code has driven that. On the passive side of the world, you have to have a donor antenna for public safety separate from any other solution that's out there. You can only get into the combined systems and when you start going full active with fiber head-end type of solutions out in the marketplaces. But on the SureCall solution, we do have our Guardian solution. Again, different pipelines coming in, but Guardian solution and our cellular solutions in the same building.
But separate devices. And usually code drives that
yes.
conversation, correct?
Correct.
Good feedback. What about you know, you talk to developers and building owners, and they just want to wait till the very end of the project and get a signal, you know, get a reading, see if it meets, you know, all of the requirements. A, have you seen that? And B, I would assume that the cost goes up exponentially because you haven't done the proper infrastructure as the building is coming online to have that in place. I mean, what have you seen historically take place?
Yeah, so let's rewind the clock 2-3 years ago, right? So 2-3 years ago, public safety wasn't as, I don't want to say it wasn't as important. It's probably a bad use of words, but it wasn't as inspected as often. So we would run into that quite often, that at the very end of that handoff between getting your final occupancy permit, the fire marshal would come in, they would do their testing, and then they would just drop that bomb and say, sorry, we're not going to give it to you because it doesn't meet code. Nobody was really aware of it. It still happens from time to time that the building management company or the GC maybe wasn't presented a technology up front, and that becomes that fire drill or that emergency. But honestly, looking at how things have changed within the last year, there's a lot of planning that goes into ensuring that it's available. So let it be, pathways have been put in, making sure we have a 2-hour riser room to be able to send the vertical cables that are going up to the donor antenna. That's in place. So all you got to do is drop a cable down, worst case scenario. Running the conduit so we can easily pull, especially if you've got hard pan ceilings, you're not cutting things open. So really planning in advance and at least putting the minimal infrastructure in place. If it's not a conduit market, running the cable. Cable at the end of the day is fairly inexpensive, especially if you're not in a plenum world. And at least having the infrastructure there. Because what typically happens, and if I go back to, I'm going to go back to one particular slide here, and we talked about doing the design side of the world and really kind of looking at, let me find it quickly, try to. When I look at a design like this, there are a lot of times that when they start doing inspections, the exterior of these buildings or the outside perimeter of the buildings will still pass the code. But when you get into the interior part of the building, remember all the reflecting and the absorption of RF signal, and that's all we're working with here, we start to see a little bit of an area within the building that we can't get the signal in. So your building could fail because 3 spots within the building or a grid end up failing the design or the inspection. So again, having the infrastructure there, at least knowing that we might have to put an antenna here, or maybe one over here because it's a fire command center area. Everything's in place and you can quickly deploy a solution so you don't disrupt the calendar of events for when you're going to hand that building off to the next owner, or if it's your own, when you're going to allow consumers into the building itself.
Good feedback. I think some of the other obvious use cases, high-rise residential, kind of a no-brainer. And you know what? I always hear the question about, do you have complete coverage? And some people, I guess, don't go to the extent of doing an IV wave design to know exactly where coverage falls short. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it is. And especially, again, a couple of years back, IV wave wasn't used very widely in this industry when it came down to fire inspections. Now in order for any type of permit to be pulled, you have to have this to be able to turn into that submittal packet. Otherwise, they won't do it. They want to see exactly what, looking at the right side here, what this antenna is going to be able to do an output of, so they can run their own math. Instead of it just being, yeah, it'll work, and I'm going to put an antenna here and you'll get signal there, they can see the exact specifications to what they should expect within the building.
No, this is good. I mean, we, just from our own experience, we get involved in projects of all sizes and complexity. And when there's a ground up building or anything of that type of development, survey is front and center. And then we just build on that, right?
Absolutely.
I guess some of the last few questions, you gave some costs, I guess 50 to 70 cents a square foot. Is that for the SureCall components, or do you have a labor piece included with that to make it a turnkey number?
So on the cellular side, it's typically 50 to 75 cents, and that would be full turnkey. Because of some of the other accessories that you need on the fire side of the world, and we don't typically include backup batteries. There are still, even in Texas, there are some markets that don't require them. Typically, our fire side, when we look at Guardians, you're anywhere between 75 to $1. When you start adding in conduit, plenum, all the other unknowns within the building space itself. But typically, turnkey, you're about $1, worst case scenario, square foot for public safety.
Good feedback. And I guess this solution does not reside or connect to your network at all, does it? Maybe I guess you mentioned something about the cloud, remote monitoring, things like that.
Yeah, that would be the only time you would ever have to connect it to the cloud or wireless or wired network is if you want to be able to utilize the SureCall cloud. We don't charge anything extra for it. It's part of who SureCall is and what we bring to the market to differentiate us from a lot of the competitors out there. But with fire, most codes do require that you are connecting the BDA to a fire panel system, and you have to do that through an annunciator to be able to have it communicate directly with it. You're not in the network; it's just sending the trouble signal over to it to say there's something wrong with the BDA.
You may want to share and expand what you mean by connection to the fire panel and having that annunciator. Yeah.
So when I look at the connections that are out there, we've got our alarm output, we have our Ethernet connection, and then of course our RS-232 and our power converter here. But typically you're going to come out of the booster, that's going to get wired up into an alarm panel, and the only way that you can do that is through an annunciator. So this in between, or the middleman here, will alert the fire panel and communicate directly with it to allow it to notice that there's an error. And then on the main fire panel, what it will show is a BDA, and it'll show a trouble light, just to say that there's something wrong with it. Then you can go back to the BDA, you can look at it, you can either plug in directly into it through a PC and see what the problem is. But remember, some of the things that we are going to alert off of is the outside antenna malfunction. So if it becomes disconnected, if it wasn't weatherproofed properly and it becomes corroded and we're starting to see a little bit more resistance in it, if the booster's turned off, it also monitors that backup battery. So the code, even though it's not necessarily specified in IFC, it's probably going to start being required by the fire marshal or the AHJ. Once that battery falls below a 30% charge, so it can only charge up to 70%, you have to go out and replace the batteries. Now, one thing I should mention when it comes down to public safety, there is an annual inspection that's required. It is a very basic where they're testing batteries, antenna malfunctions, the signal booster itself, making sure we still have the same output. So it's a very basic inspection on that. Every 5 years, you're doing a full grid walk or a full building walk again, just like you did prior to the installation of the solution.
Great feedback. This is great information, guys. We don't have any more questions. This is helpful information because I know in the Texas market, this came online this year where the code's getting enforced. There used to be some gray. As all new codes come online, what's required, what's not required. And this has been very, very helpful to everybody that participated today. And it's information we can take to the market to help all of our clients. I know that. And you guys have been a great help with that. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Jessica,
right,
turn it over to you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. All right, and thank you all for joining today's webinar. As a reminder, the recording link for today's session will be emailed to all attendees 24 to 48 hours post-event. If you did enjoy today's session and would like to hear more, we do offer new webinars weekly. Please check our DataVox website for more information on upcoming sessions. And as always, we would love to hear your feedback on our events. Once this webinar has ended, you will be redirected to a survey page. If you could please take a moment to complete the survey before closing out your browser, we would greatly appreciate it. That concludes our session for today. Thank you again to Eric and Frankie and SureCall for a great presentation, and thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.